Greetings once again, my friends, and live from Retro Central. My name is Peter, and this is a new episode of Consolation. As always, I thank you very much for taking the time to take this trip down memory lane with me and for checking out my work. I really do appreciate it. By the fall of 1995, the Sony PlayStation and, to a lesser extent, the Sega Saturn were making their ways into American households, whereas the 3DO platform was in crisis. A crisis that was brought about largely because the system was just too expensive at its launch. When you're releasing a video game system for $699.99 in the mid-1990s, you're asking for trouble. People did not have that kind of money to spend. Consequently, the system did not make its way into enough households. Publishers kind of looked at it and shrugged it off in many cases, with the exception of Electronic Arts, Crystal Dynamics, and a couple of other publishers. And the system basically just kind of lagged behind and hung around until it just couldn't hang around anymore. The 3DO had some great games that were in danger of being lost to the sands of time if it wasn't for the fact that they were resurrected for the PlayStation and in some cases the Saturn. Like Return Fire here, for example, is an example of a game that I'm glad got a second chance. Return Fire is your basic capture the flag game, but it plays anything but basic. Pick one of 5 different vehicles, fly into enemy territory or drive into enemy territory, take down its defenses, capture the flag, make it back to your base, and win until the next level, which gets more and more intricate and tougher and tougher. The other thing about Return Fire that stands out to me is its use of classical music. Depending on which vehicle you're driving, the classical music piece that's playing in the background will be a little bit different. One may be Flight of the Valkyries, another may be Ride of the Bumblebee, another may be Gustav Holst's Mars, the Bringer of War, and you may even hear a little bit of Ode to Joy in there somewhere. Return Fire, definitely worth a spot in your library, provided you can afford it. This game is starting to get more and more expensive. I paid $30 for this myself, but at least it is complete. So Return Fire is one game that got a second chance on the other 32-bit consoles. Another 3DO game that got a second chance was Shockwave, or Shockwave Assault, which you see here for the PlayStation. The thing that sticks out to me about Shockwave is its use of full motion video, which I am a sucker for. If there is a full motion video game, I want to play it. And although it doesn't play out in full motion video, a lot of the storytelling mechanisms here are powered by full motion video sequences. In fact, almost an hour's worth of full motion video sequences are included in this 2-disc set for the PlayStation. I did have the 3DO game initially, and I was not very good at it, to be honest, and I played Madden and Road Rash a lot more. Nevertheless, I did own the game, and I actually did get a little bit further when I was playing the PlayStation version, so maybe in my old age I'm getting a little bit wiser, or a little bit better, who knows. Or I'm just an old man. And the last, before I get to the main feature of this video, is Slam & Jam 96 featuring Magic and Kareem. This is a game from Crystal Dynamics and developed by a company called Left Field Productions, who went on to also put together Kobe Bryant's NBA Courtside for the Nintendo 64 and the Nintendo GameCube. This game plays a lot like Konami's run-and-gun coin-op. We're talking the good Konami, not the bad, you suck, Hideo Kojima's God kind of Konami, and talking Konami that really cared about arcade games and about console games at the time. The basic idea with run and gun and in this game is a lot of scoring, a lot of blocks, a lot of passing, a lot of alley-oops, some broken backboards, and just a lot of fun to play. Very much like the run and gun game in arcades, this doesn't have an official NBA license, so you're using a lot of the NBA cities, but no players, no teams, just a lot of made-up stuff. And yeah, Kareem and Magic are way overpowered in this game, so if you're playing as them in the All-Star team, boy, shame on you. It's cheating. But the game that I want to talk about today before it gets too dark and you can't see me here is Road Rash, which was originally released for the 3DO and then got a second lease on life for the PlayStation and the Saturn. I do have a history with Road Rash. My first experience with Road Rash was Road Rash 2 for the Genesis, which I used to play on my Nomad quite a bit, and I'm dating myself a little bit here. Road Rash is a great marriage of racing action and beating people up. And it's really a fun game to play, especially if you're having a bad day. Tearing around a corner and then beating another racer senseless or running over a pedestrian with your motorcycle is undeniably alluring. And at the same time, the game is challenging because of its varying track layouts and how they get a little bit longer with each successive level. So being able to finish in the top 3 is definitely a challenge. But the 3DO version capitalizes on, or actually expands, I should say, on the Genesis ideas by adding full motion video and by adding a licensed soundtrack, which to me is one of the best licensed soundtracks of all time. And a little bit of hyperbole there, but so what? I am a fan of grunge music. I have been for a long time. So going into menus and hearing music from Soundgarden, from Monster Magnet, from Paw, from Hammerbox, from Swerve Driver, that was just really, really cool. And some of those bands back in 1994, 1995, I had not heard yet. So hearing them for the first time turned me on to that particular style of music. And in terms of Soundgarden, I really hadn't been into them much before playing this game. And that's what motivated me to go out and buy Super Unknown, which, oh, by the way, is one of my top 3 albums of all time. So a lot of that is thanks to Road Rash. Now, as you can see Road Rash running here on the GX TV over here to my left, it does run very well on the PlayStation, just like it did on the 3DO. Very quick, sense of speed is definitely there. The track layouts are all in 3D now. As you can see, there's a lot of combat that goes on. Our racer here getting hit by a chain a couple of times. And apparently our racer is kind of passive, just wants to get to the finish line. And you certainly can do that. But you have to watch out for traffic and make sure that you're not going too fast for conditions. It's just a lot of fun to play. And the other thing about Road Rash that sticks out to me are the really funny full motion video sequences. Whether you win or especially if you lose a race. Getting to see the cops throw you in the trunk, or seeing them sick the police dog on you, or seeing you get dissed by the prize girl at the end of the race are really funny watches. Now, unfortunately, the PlayStation version kind of fine-tuned the FMV just a little bit, left some of it on the cutting room floor, but there's still enough here to keep the very basic idea of what we played on the 3DO on the PlayStation itself. As you can see, this is the small case revision. There was a long box version of the game, which I don't have, and there was also a greatest hits version, which is the one that's playing on the PlayStation right now. One last thing I want to point out, two last things I want to point out about Road Rash. First of all, the disc art is very, very similar to what the 3DO case looked like. You had that washed out purple looking racer here, whereas you see him in color with a little bit of blurring going on the box art there. The other thing is that I am a bit of a Road Rash fanatic now. I have all 3 Road Rash games for the Genesis. I have all 3 Road Rash games for the PlayStation, being this version of Road Rash 3D, which is and then Road Rash Jailbreak, which is terrible. And I also have the Sega CD version of Road Rash, which is one of my favorite versions of the game. And the reason for that is because you can listen to the game's soundtrack while you're racing. This is the only version of the new game that you can actually listen to that music while you're racing, which is really cool. Granted, it's 16-bit visuals and the frame rate isn't great, but being able to race to Outshined and the Super Unknown and the Kickstand and all that other stuff is just fantastic. And thanks to my mom for getting this for me for Christmas a couple of years ago. I had been looking for it and never found it, so it's really cool to have in my collection. So even though the 3DO is kind of in obscurity now and looked at as pretty much a failure, it's important to recognize that the system did have some really good games for it. And if it wasn't for the fact that we got to see them resurrected for the Saturn or for the PlayStation, who knows, they might have been completely forgotten, and that would be a damn shame. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Consolation as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. I really do appreciate you taking the time to check out my work. Until the next time, my friends, be good to each other, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.